this better or worse?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Cultural Studies podcast. My name is Toby Miller, but it's not just the Cultural Studies podcast. It's a joint podcast with my friend and colleague, Dennis Broe. Dennis, let us in on the secret of our other semi-clandestine podcast.
Yes, well, the underground part of this podcast is called Culture and Barbarism with an ampersand. And So our subject is the culture of politics and the politics of culture, and that's what we discuss. Rosa Luxemburg had famously said the choice is between socialism or barbarism, but perhaps today what we have is culture and barbarism. So let the barbarism begin.
Indeed, well said, sir. And our topic today, or one of them anyway, we'll see how it plays out, is artificial intelligence. Our special guest star is.
I'm Joan Pedro, and I teach journalism at Complutense University of Madrid.
Thanks, Joanne.
Welcome.
And Dennis,
Thanks.
I think we're going to
It's a pleasure
start.
to be with you.
I think we're going to start with Dennis giving us some of his thoughts.
Okay, yes, I'm going to. This is an article I've just recently published, and then I think you guys are going to talk about your article, and we should cover quite a lot about AI in the course of that. Okay, so my article is entitled AI and IP, Artificial Intelligence or Plagiarism Software. Is AI intelligence or plagiarism software? By plagiarism is meant not the use of AI that plagues teachers, that is, AI used by students to produce papers, the writing and subject matter of which they are largely unaware of, but the larger question of whether AI itself is simply a massive plagiarism device, stealing the knowledge of the world, that is, plagiarism on a grand scale. The street crime of student plagiarism may be only a lower level enactment of the sweet crime of massive plagiarism that is AI. Well, AI and IP, which is sort of the real subject of this paper. We all know about the miracle of AI, supposedly the software that will revolutionize existence, make all of our lives easier, and point the way to a brave new world. It's very important to understand that much of this is hype, selling and boosting shares in a multi-billion dollar industry that is the last best hope of Western capitalism, dictated by U.S. tech lords in Silicon Valley for the purpose of domination of the need for and profit from the digital economy. And it's important to look to lock up make obscure and keep behind closed doors the secrets of this industry. So the IP or intellectual property, in this case, the source code of the industry is kept private and can generate endless profit. But intellectual property is a key concept in the digital age. Concept can be viewed in at least three ways. From the point of view of the individual creator, IP is the work, film, play, song, book, etc., that they have produced. From the point of view of the company, IP is already established work, a film, television series, book, music, library that can be used to create or exploit other IP, with the goal being to back up as much intellectual property as possible. The third view is IP as part of a general and shared intellectual realm open to all, since this is the way in actuality ideas work or travel. What we're finding out, of course, is that AI can be a useful tool, but can't supplant human understanding and knowledge. The first thing to understand about this hype is the name itself. Artificial intelligence conceals the fact of what it is. Artificial, sweetening the fact that this is derived from a machine. This is machine intelligence, and intelligence suggesting that this form can duplicate the reasoning of the human mind, which it cannot. The economist Michael Hudson has suggested that a better, less hyped name for the phenomenon would be synthetic or non-human correlation analysis, since that is what it's doing, putting together massive amounts of data, sometimes in erroneous ways, that have given rise to the term hallucinating, where what AI returns makes no sense in terms of what has been asked. That more accurate description, synthetic correlation analysis, would not produce the billions of dollars of speculation now being poured into an industry which has yet to generate a single dollar in profits for any of the six major companies developing it. That's why there there is so much talk of the AI bubble, since there's not widespread acceptance of AI as more than a market phenomenon. The question for most analysts is not whether this is a bubble, but rather when it bursts, what will be the impact? That impact ranging from the milder dot-com crash of 2000 to the 2008 crash, which nearly brought down the system. If AI speculation in these six major companies were removed from the American economy, that economy would be at zero growth. That is, in a recession, a sign of how important the speculative bubble is and how disastrous it will be if that bubble bursts. NVIDIA, the company that makes the microchips necessary to power AI, and which has seen its profits soar on one day to unprecedented heights in the market and then come crashing down to earth on the next day as investors become nervous about the hype, has also been accused of pumping up its own stock, not only through the now standard financial industry scam of buybacks, where the company buys its own stock to boost its market valuation, but also by investing in the companies that buy NVIDIA's chips, and in that way boosting their stock and its own. This locking up of the source code, the IP behind the doors of these powerful companies, including Apple, Microsoft, OpenAI, Amazon, Google, Tesla, and Oracle, is also countered by the Chinese model of sharing source code in its AI DeepSeek, developed for less than 5% of what US tech companies are spending, and respecting the idea that this form of human interaction should be a global commons shared by all. Open source, that is the abandoning of IP in the digital age, was the dream of many of the internet pioneers, canceled instead in favor of privatizing the commons and locking up source code to increase stock value for investors and shareholders who have no interest in a global commons, only in global domination. There were two competing views of the internet when it came into existence. The first, the internet developed by the Pentagon, was of a proprietary entity used for war and intelligence. The second, by the internet pioneers, was an open and free internet developed and built by all for the purpose of increasing global knowledge. Needless to say, these competing models are still very much at play in the development of AI. The Chinese model DeepSeek, on the other hand, is developed within a global South socialist economy and is the global South equivalent, open to all, of the expensive American models. One of the ways costs are cut is by using open source code and not having to go through the extensive legal costs of locking up that code, that IP, and protecting it. Last year, Chinese open source AI models bounded past the American Big Six, accounting for 17% of all AI downloads. That is, the company with the largest percentage of downloads. That's to say nothing of how AI will be employed. It's being sold as a device to cut costs by cutting jobs, and it has already penetrated areas of middle-class employment. Legal staffers, accounting, and multiple office jobs. The promise is that 30% of US jobs could be replaced and 60% significantly altered. There's little debate on this aspect of the technology. In India, entry-level jobs in IT have been reduced by up to 25% by AI. The way the industry confronts this issue is by denying it, claiming that as many new jobs will be created as jobs lost. It's a bit like the tobacco industry in the 70s, denying the cancerous effects of cigarette smoking. In China, the way AI is developed is carefully controlled so it does not become a device for simply laying off workers and so that it benefits those in need, such as senior citizens. The problem then is not the technology itself, but the way, the system under which and purpose for which it's being developed. In the West, AI is foremost a profit-making technology that will aid in reducing costs, i.e. laying off workers, though it is sold as enhancing medical procedures, etc. This it can do, but that is a secondary goal behind the profit-making one. In China, AI is being developed to enhance the life of the workers in the society as a whole. How to train your AI dragon. Now we come to the second crucial aspect of AI and IP, and that is how AI is being constructed. It cannot reason. What it can do is absorb a massive amount of data and correlate that data, sometimes in meaningful ways, sometimes not. This has given rise to a characterization of the technology as plagiarism software, since it is being fed massive amounts of data from as many sources as the companies can muster, with often the companies just stealing the source material from which they will profit. The New York Times is currently using OpenAI, partnered with Microsoft, to create its Microsoft Pilot program, charging that the company used millions of times articles without paying a penny for them. This large-scale theft goes unremarked by the AI companies. There are further nefarious uses of AI equally prominently in the entertainment industry. The actress Scarlett Johansson criticized OpenAI for using an approximation of her voice as she crafted it in the film Her to create its female voice, Sky, its version of Siri and Alexis. The company had approached the actress and asked to use her voice, but she refused. So they used an AI approximation. Johansson claimed that her husky, sexy voice is her creation, which she worked on developing over the course of her acting career, and the company had to withdraw the voice. Johansson has a valued place in the Marvel universe as the Black Widow, a deadly assassin, and she was asked if OpenAI President Sam Altman would make a good Marvel villain. Altman is famous for surviving a revolt led by OpenAI workers, upset by his imperious rule, and then privatizing more aspects of the company. Would he be a good Marvel villain? She replied, I guess maybe with a robotic arm. Needless to say, the last actors' strike was all about protecting actors whose voice and mannerisms are their IP from having each stolen by these companies. A more insidious use of AI, IP, was uncovered by the writers in their strike. Here, the goal of the streamers and studios is to have AI write the first draft of a script and then only hire writers to come in afterwards and edit it. The property then would belong to the studio, generated by its AI. The writers canceled out this use, but no doubt it will emerge again in the upcoming contract negotiations this year, and shows how the technology is envisioned to be employed by the companies as a way of regaining control of the writer's share of IP based on their scripts. This attempt to reclaim IP from the writers and even to duplicate actors' bodies and voices is active in the music industry as well. The top country music song in 2025 for 2 weeks, Walk My Walk, was generated by AI and indicates again that the record companies are also attempting to eliminate human interaction and claim the IP proceeds for themselves. These are battles and issues the entertainment unions all must confront. Not to mention the de-skilling of a workforce necessary for their elimination. And there's a notable example in the music industry. The producer Timbaland, who has an AI-created song called Glitch X Pulse by an AI artist, Tata Tatumi, says that basic skills have diminished as digital music evolved. You don't have to know how to play chords. You've got a chord machine. People aren't making drum loops because they've already got drum packages. You just drag and drop. With AI, this de-skilling proceeds to the point where musicians no longer need to know how to play music. Of course, the AI battlefield is shifting constantly, and that, as Shoshana Zuboff says, in the age of surveillance capitalism, is the point. One goal of the tech industry is to, as they describe it, innovate so fast that no government regulation or union negotiation can keep up. This is a huge challenge for both. The leader in AI regulation in maintaining the IP integrity of artists has been Europe, but the Trump administration is attempting by its tariff regulation or tariff negotiation with the EU to halt this regulation as impinging on the profits of American companies. The goal of Silicon Valley and their Wall Street investors in this form of fintech, the melding of the financial and technology industries, is to create a new Wild West, where rules, regulations, and unions are off the table as these digital pioneers shoot it out to see which gunfighter will survive with nary a care given to the innocent bystanders, that is, the rest of us, caught in the crossfire. The contrary and opposite of this goal is what Karl Marx spoke of in the Grundrisse as the general intellect. That is the intellectual commons, open to, developed, and shared by all. In Marxian terms, this might translate to minds of the world unite. The challenge then is to claim our collective stake, not in owning, but in freely sharing the world's knowledge for the benefit not of the few, but of the many. And that's what I have to say. That's
Thanks,
AI
Dennis.
IP.
I've included in the notes a link to your piece, which is terrific, I think. Joanne, I wonder if I could invite you at this point to comment on what Dennis said, what it stimulated in you, what you're thinking about. And while you do that, I have a couple of things to do with cat management. So I'm going to disappear, but I will.
Is that a software program you have in your thing called CAT?
I think it's a soft touch program, and I'm the soft.
Okay,
Okay.
that's better.
Yeah, Dennis, this is a fantastic article. Thank you for sharing it with us. I think you debunked most of the myths surrounding AI, starting with the fact that it's not intelligence. We call it intelligence because of a massive PR campaign, which has been very effective. and uses this sort of Orwellian language. But of course, it's a probabilistic model. And as you've emphasized in the article, it's based on a massive theft of intellectual property. And we've seen corporations worried about copyright for decades, and obviously it was because for their own benefit, right? And now that they are using all the books, all the podcasts, all the information available on the internet to copy it, to sell it to the audience without providing, depending on the software, but without providing the most of the times the original sources. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not
And also in terms of places like the New York Times, to sell it back to the people they stole it from.
exactly. I mean, it's really smart in terms of profit making, but they do it because they can, because they have the power to do so. And in addition, combined with labor exploitation, especially in the global south, with very low salaries, overworked people, and so it's a really huge problem.
Yep.
And they told us that it was going to bring a much better economy, development, mutual understanding, even. So there's a lot of propaganda and public relations about AI, but this hype and this bubble, as you mentioned, will eventually explode. The matter is not if, but when.
Yes.
And it's not only, it's economic, which will produce very negative consequences for the popular classes, but it's also a scientific or pseudo-scientific bubble, an engineering bubble, precisely because these models are not based on how human intelligence works, right?
Yes.
And so therefore they are very limited, and they have many problems. They cannot provide the quality and the richness of the human mind. They can be very helpful. It's legitimate to use them for a variety of purposes, but they cannot match the human creativity and what we can do individually and together with other people. Yeah.
Yeah, intelligence really implies reasoning, and that's the one thing they can't do. They can do data correlation, and they can do it rather well, and they can do a lot with that, but reasoning, no.
Exactly.
I've got a
I was
friend.
thinking,
Sorry, Joanne, go ahead.
no, I was thinking about plagiarism in the other sense, about student plagiarism in my journalism courses. And if the AI, if the machine is based on plagiarism, how can I ask my students not
That's
to
right.
plagiarize and use
Yes.
AI?
Yes.
Um,
It's as Lacan would say, it's the big P, you know, it's the big plagiarism, and they're just a little
okay,
P.
exactly. That's right. And I've seen events like a funny story was one of the documents for an assignment. The students they titled the document Chat GPT. So I opened it and I said, perhaps it's about Chat GPT. No word about Chat GPT, and obviously because of the way it was written and the bullet points and so on, I noticed it was fully written by ChatGPT. They failed, they got a 0, and if they didn't complain, it's because they plagiarized.
Well,
And
there was a wonderful New York Times story a few months ago where hundreds of students in a University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign class, and the University of Illinois is one of the top universities in the world, they'd all used ChatGPT to plagiarize. Their professors didn't like this and failed them and told them off. So they used ChatGPT to write apology letters to the professors.
wow,
saying,
that's smart.
I'm really fucking sorry I plagiarized, et cetera, as it were. I mean,
It's a little bit like Fritz Lang's, Hangmen Also Die, this Brechtian novel where they all confessed to the crime, and so the Nazis can't arrest them because everyone's confessed to it, you know? So
Uh-huh.
everybody's using, so the whole thing is everybody's using Chat GPT. So how can you accuse one person of doing it in a
I am
way?
Spartacus.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
one of the
yeah,
things, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
no, you go ahead with your reactions, and I think you guys had opened up two areas that I think are really good to talk about. One is the AI bubble, and the other is the key question of AI in the environment. So yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Dennis. And there are a couple of pieces that Joanne and I have written. One is in English, and it's got a bit of a focus on the UK, but not exclusively. The other is in Spanish, and it's got a bit of a focus, though again, not exclusively on Spain. And I've included those again in the notes along with your piece. In terms of the political economy, I had a little story for you guys, which is I know a dude who is an engineer here in Guadalajara in Mexico, who runs the national office, in fact, the regional office for Latin America of a huge multinational. This multinational has invested vast amounts of money in artificial intelligence, not in data centers, but in literally buying the products of artificial intelligence to apply. Every day, people call him, executives at the top from the country of origin of the multinational, saying, "What have you changed today because of AI?" Or they sent him an email with the same inquiry. His answer is, my response is the same as it was yesterday and the same as it was a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Nothing has changed except the requirement that I report to you constantly on what has changed. And that's the reality so far, that 95% of companies that have invested in AI as a resource, as a thing to use, not a thing to sell, say it's had no impact whatsoever. And Darren Acemoglu, Nobel Prize winning economist, is saying that his projection is that the increase in productivity over the next decade will be less than 1% worldwide, attributable to AI. And this gets us back to what's called the Solow paradox. Robert Solow, Solow, not Napoleon Solo. Robert Solow.
Damn it. I wish it were Napoleon Solo.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. They got that idea from Ian Fleming. Originally, the notion was that the Man from U.N.C.L.E. would involve Ian Fleming in the writing, and he said he was too busy or he didn't have any more ideas. But he came up with Napoleon Solo as the hero's name. Sorry, Joanne, this is all from well before you were born, but in fact, it's almost from before Dennis was born, but it's from when I was a kid, a show called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. In any event, the point is Robert Solow invented this term, the Solow paradox, which came out in the 80s and was dismissed in the early years of the internet as being humbug, but has since been justified by lots of research. And the Solow paradox is that the more you invest in computers, the less you actually get in terms of productivity until you sack people. And the real benefit to productivity from computers is doing away with jobs. In and of themselves, they offer nothing.
Yep.
And that paradox has been sustained again and again. And the other thing on the historical side of the argument about the boom is that if you look at the history of most communications technologies and transportation technologies, you see a boom followed by a bust. And the two great examples of this from earlier in history are in Britain and the United States. In Britain, with the incredible boom in bicycle production, and then in railway production, same with the railway production in the United States, that saw an overproduction, overinvestment, and then just disastrous numbers of companies and people going broke, going bust. And if we move into the later telecommunications era, you see the same thing with everything from radio sets through to, of course, the dot-com bubble. And this is one that we all lived through and all experienced in different ways. And so that the pattern is interesting new innovation, massive overinvestment, total bust, and then some level of utility, of equilibrium, if I can use that sort of economic language, attained, where there is a certain value in the communications and or transportation technology. And we're seeing that played out again and again. But is there any sense of history in the writing about this? Not so much. Joanne, I wonder if there's something. Oh, sorry, Dennis, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really crucial is is for the industry is that there not be a sense of history, and that there not be a discussion on the actual effects of the industry, which Toby, you just so well outlined. We all remember 2 to 3 years ago, when AI was just starting to people were starting to talk about it seriously. There was a discussion about the guaranteed wage. And that there was a discussion here in France where one of the people from the Socialist Party had broken with the Socialist Party over the question of a guaranteed wage, which he was propounding. And of course, in Finland, it was tried. There was a pilot project, and it worked very well. And it turned out, surprisingly to the business press, and not only did people want to work more, they also wanted to expand the areas in which they were working once they had a guaranteed wage, which completely upset the whole prognostication, which was that people will just be lazy and they'll lay at home. But it's not being talked about. And the discourse of the guaranteed wage is gone. It's disappeared. No one's heard of it now for about 2 years. It's been replaced by the discourse in Europe of war, of how, of the war economy, which is taking up vast resources. So who can talk about a guaranteed wage when the idea is austerity and you're cutting in order to be able to invest in armaments?
As a communication scholar, I like to emphasize that this boom has been possible because of the public relations campaign of convincing governments and the broader society about the benefits of artificial intelligence, but also from a political economy perspective, because industry is addicted to its own promise, and they actually get many profits, right? For now, they have been able to amass a huge quantity of money, which is it's a bubble and it will burst, but they will socialize the costs probably as usual. So for the time being, they've made a lot of money, so that's why it keeps going. But there's an overinvestment because the value of the product doesn't match with that investment, and they don't want to miss the wave, so they keep on investing. But eventually, it will burst, and we'll see the consequences. And
Yep.
of course, I think this idea of Europe increasingly focusing its budget priorities in, as they call it, defense, which is mainly
Offense.
offense in non-Orwellian language. Um, uh, we know that AI also plays a key role in war. For example,
Mhm.
Microsoft and other companies are working for the Israeli military and participating in the genocide. It's also being used for frontier control. Yeah, so the elites contribute to impoverishing the global south, and then when there are migratory movements, they use AI to prevent them from entering, profiling them, and repressing them very often, as we see with Donald Trump,
Mhm.
but also in Spain, for example, in Melilla, where hundreds of migrants were attacked by the Moroccan police.
Mhm.
Many of them died, they were killed, with also with the Spanish police nearby and not acting. So all of these are important aspects of the use of AI, which we should also take into account.
I should say that for the first time, I'm now a fan of NATO because I think it's the only way of protecting the indigenous people of Greenland from the United States.
Mhm.
Yeah, Trump is waging war not only on the Latin American left, but also on an indigenous continent or country that really has a lot and could stand as a symbol to indigenous peoples all over the world.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
could I say something about the boom and bust? Okay. I just came from New York, and of course, in New York, all anybody wants to talk about is money. It used to be arts, but now it's money. Okay, so this is the way they're presenting it. No analyst doesn't think that AI is going to crash. The question is, as I said, will it be a manageable crash like the dot-com crash that can be, that's really just in one sector? Or will it spread and will it be more like the 2008 crash, which will bring everything down? Okay, so the financial analyst one that I talked to seemed pretty sure that it will crash and can be contained. The other one said, well, look, after 2008, what happened with the banks? They were not regulated. Nobody learned the lesson. Nobody went to jail. So the banks have a lot of money out on this. So there is the possibility that when it crashes, it really could affect other sectors of the
Oh,
economy.
and the same applies to insurance companies and mutual funds.
Yeah,
This is why the idea of containment is nonsense. And it's also why the impact on retired people, retiring people, working people could be absolutely immense, both in terms of employment directly as the platforms survive, but the smaller entities involved in AI collapse, but also in terms of how their retirement funds in the United States are invested. Because
exactly.
now that the platforms have more or less given up on spending from their own still massive cash reserves on data centers and are borrowing, there are these idiots in the banks, the insurance companies, and the mutual funds that are saying, have a piece of us. We've got all this cash.
Yeah, that's right. Unregulated.
Unregulated. Moving on, if we could, to the environmental
Yep.
material. This, I think, is a very, very important question, and one that gets some attention in the bourgeois media. The New York Times has run really excellent exposés on Ireland, Chile, and Mexico in terms of environmental impact when it comes to the extraordinary, seemingly unquenchable thirst for water and desire for energy on the part of these data centers. But it's not clear that's really penetrating public policy at any level. Joan, for example, in Spain, we're seeing the so-called socialist government saying, come and get me, baby, more and more and more data centers without really addressing these concerns.
Absolutely, yeah. The Spanish government, but also the British governments, politicians all around Europe and many other countries are huge fans of AI infrastructure, and they see it as an investment opportunity, even though it's the state which has to pay for the land, for subsidies, and so on. And we're really experiencing a huge expansion of data centers all around Europe. There are more than 3,000 data centers. In Spain, there are like 144, I believe. Only in Madrid, there are 44 because it's a very neoliberal city. It's one of the central hubs for the global economic elite. I think in the UK, it's more than 500, the same in Germany. And these are very, very huge buildings occupying the natural environment, which is treated as no man's land, yeah, nobody's land, as terra nullius, just for the profit of this corporation. So the first environmental impact is in the places where that data centers are installed. And of course, the massive use of water, which is, in Spain, we have this critical social movement opposing the construction of data centers called Tu nube seca mi río, which is your cloud is draining my river dry, which is a really good
Yeah.
use of language and words. Yeah. And and they are opposing this extraction of natural resources and especially water from the local areas, which could be used for farming or just to have the natural environment, or for housing, which is a problem in Spain, or for hospitals. It's being used for this, with many environmental problems. Mhm.
Yeah. I love, we were talking about AI as being in a way a kind of PR name for what's going on. But the other name, which you so well described, is the cloud. It
Mhm.
circulates above us. Nobody knows where it is. Doesn't really have any effect. And it's like they're beautiful. They just float across the sky, this cloud, which of course has nothing to do with reality. But it's a great name.
Well, and it's a great name in an Orwellian sense, that adjective we've been using a lot today, because it suggests this is natural and even a necessary part of life.
Yep, that's
Without
right.
water, there is no life. And
Yes.
so it's a massively obfuscatory term. And as Joanne says, one of the things about these bricks and mortar constructions is that they involve the socialization of risk, but not the socialization of risk in the way that the three of us would wish for. So if you think about the bricks and mortar public institutions of the 19th and 20th centuries, you go into a town, a village, a city, and one of the first things you'll see in LA is the Department of Water and Power. But in many places, it'll be a train station, it'll be a public school, it'll be a post office. These monuments to socializing risk in the interest of ensuring that the citizenry and other residents have access to basic needs, right? Now, those new forms, these data centers, do not have a big sign up saying post office, public school 51, LADWP, Dennis. This is Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Joanne, which in fact
Okay.
runs Los Angeles more than anybody elected.
Yes, just see Chinatown, the
Yeah,
the
see
movie Chinatown.
Chinatown, all but two Jakes for the real estate element of it. But yeah, Chinatown is great for that. But in jokes aside, with the data centers, there's nothing saying your data center, public data center number 7, or anything of that kind. You can track them if you really want to, but they're not obvious to the bystander, and nor is it obvious the element of public subvention, getting back to Joanne's point, that is being used. Public subvention, not only in terms of occupying space, but literally money that is being handed over towards this. And we're seeing every major international organization, from the Economic Commission on Latin America through to the World Bank, through to the International Monetary Fund, saying to countries in the global south, you've got to accept more and more foreign direct investment. This foreign direct investment in artificial intelligence is going to help you, without acknowledging that, for example, here in Latin America, the foreign direct investment is coming from 3 places: the European Union, China, and the United States. And it's not new investment. It's the recirculation of profits made by companies from those entities already within Latin America. It's not new money, right? New money in the good sense of new money. So on the one hand, we're seeing a 3-card trick in terms of the problematic use of the metaphor of the cloud. We're seeing the hidden nature of subvention, and we're seeing the mad idea that all this investment that's coming into these countries is valuable to them. Because whilst one could argue that at the moment of the construction of these data centers, jobs are created for local people, once they're built, they have very little need for human labor, absolutely minimal.
It's just like the film industry, it always promises many jobs. The studio is built and then there's no more jobs. I want to say something too about it. Toby, you said the thing, it hasn't penetrated public consciousness, but one place where it has, at least in the US, is there is some pushback around data centers. So 25 data center projects around the country were canceled last year due to opposition from local communities. As you said, data centers run on monstrous energy demands that have a toll on the local power grid and resources. People living in close proximity to data centers have reported water shortages and, of course, soaring electricity prices.
Mm.
Living in areas around data centers, they saw their electricity bill jump in sometimes 267% compared to 5 years before. So these were canceled due to opposition. Data centers can also have an adverse effect on the health of the local community, which they're starting to realize. A recent study by Environmental Data and Governance Initiative found that those living within 1 mile of an EPA regulated data center were breathing air pollution at levels above the national average. And of course, the key word at this moment in American politics is affordability. This is also a cost of living crisis plaguing the country, and the average citizen is growing more concerned about rising electricity bills. The report found that water use was the biggest reason for local opposition. That is, that these companies need more water. About 40% of data centers that sustained local opposition eventually were canceled. So it is possible to cancel them if there's enough local, resistance. And in November 2025 elections, a Democrat flipped a reliably Republican seat in the Virginia legislature by running a campaign focusing on the burden of data centers. So it's going to become an issue.
Yeah, in regards to the cloud metaphor, it also suggests that it's an immaterial product. Yeah, when it's really very material, not only because of the physical data centers, but because of the minerals which have to be extracted, and because of all of the material economic consequences that Dennis and Toby also are mentioning. Yeah, with regards to shortages, with regards to the prices, the electricity prices going up, etc. And I have a few figures about the environmental impact of, for example, AI systems. It has been suggested that they may have a carbon footprint equivalent to that of New York City in 2025. Also, that the data center share of US electricity is projected to more than double to 8.6 by 2035, and to account for at least 20% of the rich world's growth in electricity demand by the end of the decade. So it's really the problem already exists, but the data centers' thirst for electricity and for natural resources is growing very, very rapidly, and the environmental impact is also getting increasingly worse. No? And at the meantime, the US government has announced that they will burn more beautiful, clean coal because it will be essential to win the AI race. Yeah. So we really need to start thinking about the resistance, as you've mentioned in the United States, in many places around Europe. We've seen it in Spain too. And there are like hundreds of associations in the United States which signed a letter asking for a moratorium regarding the construction of data centers. So I think the negative impact is so big that the resistance can unite many different people, people from different backgrounds, not only the left, not only environmentalists, but different people from the local population. So I think this is a huge challenge, but also an opportunity to think beyond the party lines and ideological lines and think about the common good. So we really need to think how to communicate with people who are different from us, but we have shared problems. So I think it's the way to go forward. Yeah.
I'm thinking about a popular front with evangelical Christians.
Yep.
And I say that
They have to breathe also.
also, but they don't like the idea of playing God, in inverted commas. They don't like the omniscience that is being accorded to artificial intelligence in much of the discourse. They don't like, in many cases, the chummy relationships between the tech bros and Trump. They actually don't like the reality of the United States ruling class in many cases, even though they keep voting in support of it for cultural issues, right, Dennis?
Well, yes, Trump was elected in his terms, flipping the bird at the since that's what he does. That's what he did in the factory a few days ago to the worker who accused him of being a uh, predator, predator concealer. Anyway, yeah, Trump got elected because he flipped the bird at this power and said he was going to drain the swamp. But of course, all he did all he did was pollute it further.
So I'm actually very hopeful of precisely the scenario that Joanna's briefly outlined for us, in concert with these extraordinary local campaigns in the United States that you've mentioned. And they're going on all over the place, where people find they really have common cause on something that's absolutely elemental, even though they may be quite opposed to one another on a whole raft of other questions. So my issue there, or my question there, and this is something that Joanne and I are still working on today. In fact, I was working on it at 5 o'clock this morning until I finally went to bed for an hour and a half, which just shows the kind of incredible dedication to knowledge that the three of us have.
Melatonin helps, though. Anyway.
And that is, what can be the role of the intellectual in this? And by intellectual, I don't mean anything fancy. I just mean it could be an engineer, it could be a bridge builder, it could be an architect, it could be a public policy person, it could be, in your case, Joanna, communications, journalism specialist. What can we actually do that's of value here in order to help to coalesce with and learn from the resistance?
Well, I think the starting point is to join social movements, to accompany them. Um, uh, Depending on your field of expertise, you can do different things. Yeah. So, for example, at the beginning of this talk, Dennis was mentioning the difficulty to regulate AI because it's changing, and the laws are always slow, yeah, to put into to approve to pass. Um, uh, but public policy scholars, they need to design, listening to social movements and to other scientists. They need to design possible regulatory frameworks, yeah, public policies. From our point of view in communication, we can give voice to all these social movements, to local populations, interview them, write about them and with them, find media outlets to share, to spread the word. Um, uh, and I think it's really important to be there also physically, yeah, to spend time with the communities, listen to them, learn what are their problems, how they view the situation, and what proposals they have and what they want to do. So it depends really on your field of expertise, but on a general level, joining this broad um, uh, block of very different people to add our ideas and our to make our contribution.
Can I say something too? Because I have an idea about this, which is I want to talk about just for a moment AI in Venezuela, which I think has not been talked about enough. So, Venezuela is the holy triumvirate, oil, rare earths, and water, all of which are needed for AI, all of which are in slightly short supply in the US. Global AI demand is expected to consume between 4.2 and 6.6 billion cubic meters of water in the next 2 years. So surpassing even, for example, Denmark's total annual water withdrawal. So water is a big deal. Plus, in the US, water's drying up. The Colorado River, which is now at a point where it cannot provide the required level of water for the 7 states that rely on it. And of course, in the West, you have fracking, which is sort of polluting water. So, as well as what's going on. One of the states that water is short in is California, which is the site of Silicon Valley. In terms of the of rare earths, it certainly Venezuela has those as well. It's not as they call it the lithium triumvirate, which is Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. But Elon Musk, tweeted when they overthrew, the regime in Bolivia, of course we could, we'll coup whenever we want. And they couped Venezuela, or they attempted to. They didn't do it successfully, but they attempted to. So I think it's important also to link some of this stuff with the sort of, let's say, desperate measures of the empire to sort of maintain its power. And Trump made a statement which is very interesting, which is about this, which he said, let's see, okay. He said he was going to do everything he could to ensure that Americans don't pick up the tab for their power consumption in the form of paying higher utility bills. So that could be imported water and power. I think that's what he's talking about. So all of this I think it might be useful to connect AI and Venezuela. So, that's another thing that we can do as intellectuals. We can have a wider view, as well as the local view is, of course, probably the most important in terms of actually involving people. But the wider view, I think, is important also in terms of what these moves of the empire are and what's behind them. Because AI is certainly behind them. We know Trump's backers are Peter Thiel, with Palantir, they're Zuckerberg with Facebook, they're Bezos with Amazon. These are all AI people. And these were the people who were, sitting at his coronation.
Absolutely, Dennis. I think you hit the nail on the head. This is what we can do, provide the big picture while being concrete and specific about what are the interests of the empire, of the techno-feudal corporations, which are in charge of the planet in alliance with the U.S. government. I mean, they have actually taken the U.S. government, and also raise awareness about the fact that AI is a precious, finite resource that should be used responsibly and not massively, only when needed and effectively and for the common good, not for so many very often superficial things,
Yep.
but also very often for malign purposes, as we've seen recently with a scandal about nude fake pictures with Elon Musk's AI Grok, which, by the way, Musk doesn't seem to be very good with branding, because X Grok, I don't really think it's he's really really talented with branding. But these are real problems affecting minors, in this case, teenagers. And for
I,
example,
I, I think it started out as X, which sounds sort of mysterious, and it turned out to be Grok, which sounds like somebody burping.
okay, exactly, or a frog or burping. Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And things can be done. We've seen Malaysia and Indonesia. They have blocked Grok. The Spanish Ministry of Youth and Children, sorry, has asked the Attorney General to conduct an investigation to Grok because of child pornography or child abuse. So from the government level, things can be done. Also from the social movements, and intellectuals can operate in both sectors, and that's also the way to go.
I think we've only got a couple of minutes left. We haven't mentioned organized labor, which is also potentially significant here, because in many cases they're union jobs, or there used to be union jobs in construction, but also in lots of the related fields. And we need to get unions on side about this, and not just talking about job losses, which is their food and drink, but about these wider questions of politics and the environment and people's retirement funds, for God's sake, right?
That's a good one. Yeah.
These are really
Mm-hmm.
crucial issues, especially in the United States. And we also need to find a way in which the social movements and the blocks that we're discussing can be very local, as they must be, but with ties elsewhere, so that they're not operating in a vacuum and feeling too lonely, so that they can pick up ideas between Chilean resistance and Spanish resistance, for example, or between British resistance and US resistance, because there are so many threads in common here. And so I guess it's that possibility for a multinational connection that I want to see a lot of. And when it comes to, the ultimate boring answer from academics, teaching, I want this to be front and center in our classes. Dennis, when you did cinema studies, one of the good things about cinema studies versus literary studies is that you learnt about the technology and you learnt about the political economy, not just about the meaning, right? And that's been a feature of your work, not just on film, but on television and other media. And it seems to me we need to bring that focus on the material side of the communications media to bear in our classes, as well as in our journalistic and scholarly articles, and also bring to bear a new revisionist history that is environmental right across the story of these technologies.
I agree. And also, I want to mention the Bolivarian Revolution, the links which is important, I think, and to make these contacts, to make these what do you call it? Relationships. So that the empire, because the empire looks all powerful at the moment, or can look all powerful at the moment, instead of what it is, which is fairly desperate.
Yeah.
That is, it needs this. It doesn't have anything else but AI, and it needs water, rare earths, and oil to power it. And if it doesn't get that, the whole thing may collapse. So I think rather than seeing what Trump's doing as this extreme power, when you start to put it in perspective, it actually is a sign of weakness.
Joanne, for us to finish, is there something you'd like to say in peroration?
I absolutely agree with both of you. And I think we shouldn't get demoralized. On the contrary, because of this sign of weakness of the empire, which we have seen in Venezuela and we'll see elsewhere. And this spectacle to show his power is also to hide that the empire is actually in decline. And this is an empire in decline which tries to keep as much power as it can, but it's not as powerful as 50 years ago, etc. Yeah. So with good hopes and with optimism and with rationality and also with positive emotions, we can combat the empire of the US and also AI, which is not God. It's not omnipotent, neither omniscient, nor What was the other omni with God? Omnipresent. It's neither omnipresent. There are spaces for autonomy. Yeah. So that would be my final message.
Beautifully put. I want to thank you both very much for doing this, and I'm hoping people are enjoying the barbarism series with Dennis and our various interlocutors. So many thanks.
I have one last word. Go Greenland.
Go indeed.